may be wrong, Dan, but it looks like you've got a door alignment job coming up.
Oh, you're so right it hurts, Tech. I'm sure glad you're on hand. The door glass on this DeSoto four-door hardtop needs lining up. I've shanghaied young Ernie Todd for the job so as I can get him up to snuff on what's new in door service.
I still think you're twisting the wrong man's arm, Dan. I haven't done any body work in a long, long stretch.
Best reason why you shouldn't back out, Ernie. It's time you did refresh your memory. And besides, there's good news. Our engineers have been looking out for you. They've simplified the door and window controls on all of our hardtop models. Adjustments are easier, and once you make them, they stay put.
Sounds encouraging, Tech. That I like.
Here's another cheerful earful, Ernie. Most of the tried and true door adjustment methods you've used before still apply. Let's brush up on them and see how they work out in this case.
All right, Dan. Where should we start?
Even when an owner asks for a window adjustment, Ernie, always inspect the door fit first. Adjusting glass alone isn't enough if the doors are out of line. Spacing around the door should be as even as you can get it. Each door should be centered in its opening.
Okay, Dan. But I've always wondered about that. Why can't spacing around doors be perfect?
Perfect spacing is sometimes hard to come by, Ernie. Every car made has that problem, and will have it as long as metal stampings are used.
Tech's right. When you draw or stamp sheet steel, it often stretches or shrinks in the process. That's why 1/16 inch is the usual dimension tolerance. 1/16 is a lot closer than you get in other large constructions, like homes, for instance. But with a 1/16 tolerance, you can see how a stack-up of as much as 3/8 inch is possible. That's why door spacing sometimes needs to be evened out.
Now, you've answered my question, Dan. Centering the door is still going to be the number one step.
Right. Now, all doors should also open and close easily. No yanking, no slamming. And door panels should fit flush with their surrounding body panels.
On this hardtop, then, I guess we'd start adjusting the doors beginning with the rear door, like before, huh?
That's the ticket, Ernie. Work from rear to front. You can't shift the rear quarter panel, but you can move the front fender if necessary.
In most cases, you can align doors easily by using the built-in adjustments provided. All models except Valiant use newly designed cam and roller-type door hinges with tapped floating hinge plates. You can move doors up or down by loosening bolts at the hinge pillar or in the door itself. Moving the door fore or aft and in or out can be done by a combination of hinge adjustments at the door and pillar.
I get the picture. Then I'd readjust the striker plate if it's needed, huh?
That's right. Some fellas like to loosen or remove the striker plates to prevent interference as they align the doors.
Right. Now, Ernie, suppose you go ahead and remove the garnish molding, the armrest, the inside handles, the trim panel, and water shield. Then when you get the doors lined up, we'll line up that window glass.
Okay, Dan, will do.
I see you got the spacing all fairly even, Ernie. Nice job. How do the doors open and close now?
Easier than before, Dan. But I did have to readjust the striker plates. Both doors now close so the lock rests on the striker. There's no rise and no drop as you close the door.
Attaboy, Ernie. Now, here's something you may want to keep in mind. If you ever need to bring the latch plate closer to the door for full engagement, you can shim between the latch plate and pillar. 1/32 and 1/16 inch shims are available.
Okay, good tip. Now, I guess we're ready for the glass adjustments.
Yep. And you always start adjusting the glass at the front vent wing assembly and work toward the rear. Since the rear door glass on this car overlaps the front glass, both might have to be moved, as well as the vent wing. Incidentally, in your new car preparation, don't be sidetracked by what looks like good glass alignment. Get inside the car, close the doors, and then run the windows down and up. Begin with the rear door or the rear quarter window on a two-door hardtop. The metal lip on the front door window frame might be holding the rear door glass in against the vertical seal. But when you lower the rear glass and raise it, it might move outside the front door glass. Here's another thing. When the rear glass doesn't line up, It might gouge or shear the vertical seal as the rear window is raised.
I see what you mean, Dan. I suppose good new car preparation might have prevented the bad glass fit in this case.
Could be, Ernie. But to get back to the vent wing, inspect for even spacing at the pillar and at the top, especially at the upper rear corner. You can't have any gap or overlap there, or it'll cause water leakage or wind noise. Open and close the vent wing next. The tension clamp screw may need tightening or loosening. Ours feels okay, smooth and firm, but I think the vent wing assembly could be tilted forward a little.
Oh? How's that done?
Well, you first loosen the vent wing attaching bolts, also the front vent tilt adjusting bolt. And down at the bottom, loosen the stud that holds the division bar to the bracket attached to the door inner panel. You can reach that stud through an access hole. You can get some fore and aft and some in and out adjustment at that point.
I see, Dan. Here, let me move it.
Vent wing looks good now, Ernie. Spacing's even at the pillar and roof rail, and it's in toward the body more at the top. Tighten up the bolts.
Okay, Tech. I'll have it in a couple of shakes.
Let's run the front window up and down to see if it binds and how it fits up against the roof rail weather strip. That'll also tell us how to move the adjustable guide tracks. Notice that the seal's been simplified. The glass just has to rest against the outer lip. It doesn't have to fit in the groove.
I get it. And I can see our window has to come in toward the car a little more at the top and tilt forward slightly. It doesn't run up quite high enough either.
Right you are, Ernie. And all those adjustments are designed into the door. That glass can be moved fore or aft, in or out, and up and down. Just loosen the upper and lower guide track adjustment bolts. They permit fore, aft, in, and out movement. Align the glass with the vent wing and move the top edge up so it rests against the roof rail weather strip. Tighten the track adjusting bolts, close the door, and check the glass alignment.
Shall I also run the glass up and down a couple of times?
Keep your shirt on, Ernie. You've still got to reset the upper glass stops and the lower stop.
Zowie, Tech. Almost forgot. I'll have it done in a second.
This front window works fine now, Ernie, and looks much better. Let's tackle that rear glass next.
Yeah, hold your fire, Dan. There's one other thing to do. Somebody's got to turn this record. The needle's moving awfully close to the hole.
The front and rear guide tracks on the rear window are both adjustable, Ernie. Here are the adjustments that can be made. By means of top and bottom adjusting bolts on the front track, you can get fore and aft, as well as in and out adjustment. On the rear track, top and bottom adjusting bolts provide an in and out adjustment only. In addition, there's an up and down adjustment available by loosening the screws at the regulator mounting plate.
Sounds like enough adjustment points to do what we want to do.
Yeah, Ernie. You'll want to bring in this upper front corner that overlaps and still keep good contact with the roof rail weather strip. Dan can call out what's needed.
Right. Loosen the upper and lower guide track adjusting bolts and loosen the upper stop screws. After that, line up the front of the rear glass with the rear edge of the front window. Be sure that the curved frame contacts the roof rail weather strip evenly across the top. Adjust the glass so that the front corner comes in toward the body more at the top. Then, tighten the guide track bolts and check what you've done so far.
Now, you might have to do that a couple of times before you get it exactly right, Ernie.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, Tech. I don't think anybody gets it perfectly lined up right off the bat.
You're so right. And when you do get that glass lined up, run the window up until it makes a good contact with the roof rail weather strip. Then, adjust the upper stop screws. Lower the window next. When it's flush with the top of the door, adjust the lower stop.
And that buttons it up, right?
Nope, wrong. Still got to close the door, and then from the inside, run the window up and down to see if it still stays in alignment.
Oh, sure, Dan. I wasn't going to forget that.
Well, now and then, somebody does forget. We just don't want it to be you, buddy boy.
Okay. Now, should I reinstall the trim panel and hardware?
Not yet, Ernie. Normally you would, but I'd like to talk about remote control and lock service.
All right. But I've still got a question on glass adjustment. I was wondering about the two-door hardtop, the rear quarter window in particular.
Oh, my oversight, Ernie. I meant to cover that. On two-door hardtops, you adjust the front door, front vent, and front glass the same as we've done on this car. But to adjust the rear quarter window, you'll have to remove the rear seat cushion, regulator handle, and trim panels. You can adjust the rear quarter window in or out by means of 4 adjusting screws threaded into the pivot bracket. You can get some up and down and radial movement by moving the regulator. The rear of the window can be adjusted in or out by means of adjusting bolts at the top and bottom of the guide track. Upward travel of the window is controlled by an adjustable stop at the rear. This stop also controls fore and aft adjustment. An adjustable lower stop controls downward travel.
Very clear, Dan. Guess we can talk about locks now.
Good. Keep in mind that too much or too little door lock and linkage lubrication can affect lock operation. The door might bounce open when it's slammed, or the handle might be hard to move. The door might work too slowly in cold weather, or the lock might tend to ice up. That can all point to improper lubrication. So anytime you have the trim panel off, apply a light coating of Mopar or Cryco lubriplate to all lock pivot points, wearing surfaces, handle to lock ball joints, handle pivots, and even in the door lock cylinder.
Catch the remote control assembly while you're at it, Ernie. Use a light coating of Mopar or Cryco lubriplate on the window regulator gears and pivot points. And put some Mopar or Cryco door ease on the lock striker.
Okay, will do.
If proper lubrication doesn't correct a door malfunction, then you'll have to look for other possible causes. As an example, let's say a door is hard to open, or it tends to stick. In a case like this, the striker might be rubbing on the door face or on the back of the rotor housing. You'd have to straighten or shim the striker to eliminate the interference. If the door molding or trim interferes with the pillar, relocate them to remove the interference. An incorrect striker angle can also cause sticking. If so, adjust the striker so the lock rests on the striker when the door is closed. That means no rise and no drop as the lock engages the striker.
Suppose the door is hard to close.
Could mean high spots on the weather strips or rubber bumpers too thick. Shim or adjust the weather strips. Re-cement where necessary. Trim down any bumpers that are too thick. Too little hinge lubrication, misaligned hinges, or a striker out of adjustment can also cause hard closing. So lubriplate or align hinges. Adjust the striker so the lock engages in the second position when the door is flush with the pillar. Now, if the remote control handle won't return to its neutral position, first check for interference on the trim panel.
Suppose it won't return with the trim panel off.
Well, in that case, inspect the remote control mechanism for lack of lubrication. Also for a tight anti-rattle clip on the inner panel at the middle of the remote to lock link. Tight pivots or damaged parts may also be a cause of this condition. Now, here's another possibility. Suppose the outside handle won't release the lock. It could be simply that the lock adjustment is set too high. If so, change the lock adjusting screw setting. If that doesn't work, the outside handle to lock link might be disconnected. So be sure the flattened end of the link isn't too wide so it spreads the clip. File the edge of the flat so the clip fits freely, and then install the link.
What if that doesn't do the trick?
Well, the only possibility left is a bent or broken ratchet dog lifting arm lip. That, of course, calls for installing a new lock.
Okay, Tech. Now, anything else on servicing door lock conditions?
Yep. Let's say the inside handle won't release the lock on a rear door.
Makes it kind of awkward for the passengers, huh?
You know it. Well, when that happens on a rear door, it means the remote control assembly's out of adjustment. So what you do is loosen the remote control assembly screws. Then, with the lock locked, move the remote control assembly forward as far as you can without forcing or bending the lock to control link. Tighten the attaching screws and check the operation. Now, on a front door with the same condition, you correct it the same way. But when you move the remote control assembly forward with the lock locked, don't move the assembly too far forward.
Why not, Dan?
Too much movement might pull the lock dog out of engagement with the rotor ratchet. The rotor could freewheel. So check door operation, particularly the dog and ratchet engagement.
Okay, Dan, very clear. Got another fix?
Well, let's suppose a door lock doesn't hold the door closed. Usually, that means that the lock dog or lock lever is jammed or bent. That calls for installing a new lock. Now, on this DeSoto, reinstall the water shields, trim panels, and hardware.
Okay, Dan. And if I can remember all the good service tips you mentioned, I'll be all set.
Worry no more, Ernie. This reference book has all that we've covered, plus a lot of extra information on door and lock service.
Good news, Tech. I'll certainly dust off every single page.
Attaboy. Now, I notice you're wearing the new Certified Car Care emblem. Know what it means?
I sure do. This emblem means we're 100% behind the new program that gets every owner of a Chrysler-made car to return to his dealer for regular maintenance when it's needed. By knowing how and doing the things on each Certified Car Care coupon, we make sure the owner's car runs longer, better, and keeps him happier.
You're so right. And the owner discovers why his dealer service is best. He realizes you have master service technicians, special tools and equipment, and genuine factory-engineered parts designed for his car. So Certified Car Care means, first, more steady service customers that increase service volume. Second, it means that customers will be coming to you not because of trouble, but to prevent trouble. And third, you'll get more chances to sell extra services and accessories. And fourth, you'll have a better chance to sell that customer a new car. His present car will have a higher trade-in value because of the regular maintenance care it has had.